Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News, and I have a burp sitting right in the back of my throat. There we go. Go on now. Hey, Joey.
And welcome to the show.
Hey, welcome.
How you doing,
I didn't know what to do with it. Yeah, I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Not too bad.
Busy. I got back into podcasting today. I haven't done a podcast for a month. I've been so focused on getting this done and sorting this out that it's gone to the wayside. So I did a podcast today. I did a podcast with a guy called Professor Dave. Professor Dave is a YouTuber from America with 2 million subscribers. And he basically delivers using as few words as possible, but with as much information as he can, scientific educational videos. So I had a chat with Professor Dave. He's a little bit been dragged into sort of, anti-vaxxer conversations and flat earth conversations because from his scientific brain, he likes to debunk them. So yeah, that was fun. I got a chance to finally get back to podcasting, which is long form conversational, and did that this afternoon, and it'll be uploaded to the same YouTube channel that's scrolling across the bottom because it's like a channel for all of our content on Friday morning. So I'm quite looking forward to sitting down tomorrow and putting some editing of that together. How about you? Busy?
No, the exact opposite. It's cold and wet and miserable. So I've cocooned myself into my house.
Well, you know what people are going to do when they see you and me back on again, bro? They're going to go, now we're going to finish the Star Wars conversation. So we've got a lot to talk about. In fact, tonight's interesting one. It's like a Jacinda special almost, because the Prime Minister features in all three of our conversations today, some good, some bad, some neutral. We're going to talk about her meeting with President Biden at the White House and the controversy around the gift that was given. I don't think literally from her. She didn't go down to the local store and pick it up. It was from the office of the Prime Minister. We want to talk a little bit about a very small bit about the rant I had last night about her having that maskless photo with all those young politicians, because she has responded to it. And there's a bit of a strange flow on, actually, because we talked last night a bit about, it's a really bad look, the do as I say, not as I do, especially in politics when so much comes down to optics, and you've given someone the ammunition to just criticize you and call you a hypocrite, which you have done. But there is another story out today of someone else within her team, not a politician, but a government agent, government employee, doing as I saying, but not as he does. But in a very different, like the opposite. Normally when you say that, do as I say, not as I do, you're being a hypocrite because you're getting them to do something more difficult that you wouldn't do. This is the same thing. Do as I say, but not as I do. But it's someone doing something good and allowing the rest of us to do something bad. So it's kind of the opposite, but it's still the same saying. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. And also I want to talk about Three Waters. Actually, I'm intrigued with Three Waters. I don't know too much about it other than the very basics, but it seems that because local body elections are coming up in October, mayors around the country are having to put their stake in the ground. Are they pro or con Three Waters? And so it's probably a good time to start looking at individual situations, what the mayors are saying, and try and figure out, is it good or bad or neutral? So we'll have a look at a little bit at Three Waters tonight as well. But before we do all that, I think it was Friday night. I was texting you on Friday night with little videos about, or maybe it was Saturday night, or maybe it was Sunday afternoon. I don't know. Actually, it was probably Sunday afternoon, wasn't it? Texting you little videos of starting to watch the final episode 9 of Star Wars, and you said you had some strong words about episode 8.
I have feelings.
And I have to tell you
about that movie.
I sent you that message when Kylo Ren and Rey kissed, right? And I'm like, don't you do it. Don't you fucking do it. And it was really felt to me like it was kind of a crowbarred storyline in that really didn't need to be there. So I got quite frustrated with the last episode and sort of the multiple love stories in there. It was like I'm part watching a Mills and Boons thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's part of your frustration, but it was like it just seemed so wrong that these two they weren't brother and sister, but it was kind of the same sort of awkwardness elevated as to when Leia kissed Luke. And then once you knew they were siblings, you're like, oh, that okay, wrong. It felt wrong, even though they're not siblings.
It, the idea that they were going for with Kylo and Rey was the idea of a Force dryad, which is basically there's a light side of the Force and there's a dark side of the Force, and it exactly mirrors each other. And that's what they were supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be a romantic connection.
Yeah.
It was just a very strong connection. There's, only a couple of Force users left. And they can talk to each other through the Force. And that I was fine with that. That sounds that's a great idea, right?
Yeah.
And this is my frustration with so many of the last two movies is there's some great ideas about it, and then it seems like whoever was writing the script or whoever was approving stuff was just getting distracted by butterflies or shiny bits of cutlery and just forgetting the point that they were making in the last movie. Force Awakens, John Boyega's character, the released stormtrooper, who in the first of the sequel movies maybe he had Force powers. He used a lightsaber, and maybe we're going to do something cool with that. No, we're going to put him in a coma, and then we're going to give him a really weird love story that goes nowhere. And
a triangular love story. There's the polyamory story going on. It actually could even be four ways because there was this weird thing between him and Rey, and then there was in the second movie the Resistance fighter, and then in the third movie there was the other former stormtrooper as well. So it was like he had it all going on. He's a player.
So Rose, the Resistance member that he had a brief thing with, that's my other thing. And in a universe full of people with crazy names, we got Rose. And it's just like, what's this name for? We got all of these names. What's the name for this character that we're going to bring to the forefront for a bit? Yeah, we're just going to name her after my nan. Her name was Rose.
Maybe they just did Titanic again or something.
Oh, it's just so much stuff. Like the Suicide Run with the bombers for some reason. They wanted to do a World War II scene. They ignored physics and space in the process and did one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And I remember watching that in the cinema going, oh, this isn't a good sign. Palpatine's back for some reason.
Yeah, that was weird as well. Spoilers, by the way.
Are we going to explain it all? No, we're not. He's just back.
Well, it kind of did. There was something about him. I've died many times, or something. He said something like that. So whether
something
he's
about cloning,
or
man, imagine if they had like two movies previous to explain that a bit more. And then suddenly, at exactly the same time, all of these ships turn up, and they do what? Oh, there's horses. There's space horses.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the fuck is going on with this? I mean, I know writers' rooms have a lot of cocaine in them, but it seems like too much cocaine.
I wonder what's going to happen next as well, because I thought about it after watching the third one and went, there seems to be a 20-year gap, 70s, 80s, 90s, the aughts, whatever it's called, and then sort of the late teens. I hope that they don't now start doing like every 3 or 4 years another one. Like, I hope there's a good gap and then something new if they're going to do it. But I guess it's Disney and they want to make money, and
that's how they fucked it all up. They wanted to do annual movie releases on something as big as Star Wars. And that's why the Han Solo movie didn't get a fair shake of the stick. Their hit versus miss ratio is not great on the latest movies. For every Rogue One, they've got the last movie, I can't know, the episode 9 or whatever it's called. There's a little bit of a trail.
Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker. Is that what
that's right? Right. Oh, that's right. Who named Skywalker for some reason?
Well, she picks it.
She picks it, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel earned at all. is my whole thing with it, and it's hard to sort of be critical of the movie because I jump online and I see so many people that are critical of the movie because they don't like the actress, because they don't like, the actress that played Rose got driven off the internet because of people being shitheels. There's nothing against that. There's nothing against the actors. You're only as good as the material that you get, and it's just in this instance, I feel like rather than they had 3 movies planned out with 3 different directors, they did the first one and they got mild criticism that it's just like A New Hope, which I was fine with. There's a symmetry in it, which is awesome. And then they gave it to a different director who quite loudly went, "I'm throwing everything out the fucking window," and nobody stopped him. And that sort of derailed a lot of storyline beats and that sort of thing. And then they had to bring the first director back to try and fix it. And it's just like, well, the other guy just set fire to so much. What can I do? But it seems Disney are doing good stuff with the TV shows. So maybe they'll just focus on that for a bit.
Well, that would make sense for their platform as well, rather than the big. It must be exponentially cheaper to make it for TV than it is also for the big screen, surely.
Well, it's interesting. You often see, when they talk about the budgets that they have for some TV shows like Game of Thrones, like the new Star Wars movies, over the space of a season, they are spending blockbuster money easily.
Right. And the new Game of Thrones TV show's coming out shortly as well, on August the 4th.
Oh, I can't look. I tell you what, there are 2 things that I couldn't be less excited about, and that's the new Game of Thrones TV show and the Lord of the Rings TV show.
I saw that flicking across Amazon the other day, and I'm just like, I'm just not interested. It hasn't caught my attention at all. All right. Do you know what I'm interested in? Getting on with some stories. Shall we do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, let's do that.
Let's get into the PM going to Washington, D.C. and presenting President Biden with what has been described as an appalling mistake of a gift. The PM has criticized, I think, straight away. And look, if you watched the show last night, we're not adverse to criticizing the PM on decisions that she has or hasn't made. But I think this has got nothing to do with her. So
yeah, I haven't seen what the gift is. So can I take some guesses?
Go for it.
Okay. Is it a service station pie, a blue V, and a pack of cigarettes?
No, it's a big dildo that hit Stephen Joyce in the face. They regifted it.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be really good. I'm going to say a Buzzy Bee from an op shop.
A Buzzy Bee made from Swamp Cody. Yeah, that's about right. So that's actually what it is. It's Swamp Cody. The Prime Minister gave the bowl, that's a Swamp Cody bowl, to Joe Biden on her recent visit to Washington. Her office has confirmed the wood came from businessman Nelson Parker, one environmentalist. I like this. We're going to reflect on this a bit later on. Actually, one person, one environmentalist. How many environmentalists are there in the country? One has called it an appalling mistake. And that got the headline. A Minister for Primary Industries report provided to RNZ showed that this guy who gave the gift, right, Nelson Parker, this is part of the criticism, was investigated in 2019. It found he likely contravened the Forest Acts, exporting Swamp Cody to China and calling it artwork. Products must be manufactured, not just raw wood. But the ministry, I just caught Gareth up the side of my eyes. Gareth said that the gift that she gave was a Winston Peters no sign. I quite like that. I got distracted. I'm like one of those dogs. Squirrel. I just saw it at the corner of my eye there, Gareth. Anyway, so products have to be manufactured, not just raw wood going off to China. But the ministry decided not to prosecute because officials initially told Parker the Cody was compliant. Farrell said the Prime Minister's office needed to do more investigating, fair call, when buying gifts for world-famous people and had shown a lack of care. Again, fair call. To use Swamp Cody of all things for a gift to America is not really on. It's shocking after all the work we've done or we've gone through to try and protect these wetlands that produce Swamp Cody. So they're a group that are an environmentalist group, right? The society that he's a part of. The society took a fight to stop the export of raw Swamp Cody logs all the way to the Supreme Court in 2018 and won. The timber is milled from trees that have been buried and preserved in peat swamps for between 800 and 60,000 years. Extraction can damage ecosystems as well as historically and culturally important sites, although NIWA surveys suggest most swamp kauri now sits under farm paddocks. Any use of swamp kauri that is featured by our government therefore puts our wetlands at risk because people will want more swamp kauri now, he says. She says the swamp kauri gift was an appalling mistake and wasn't moral, and the president should reconsider his possession of the wood extracted by Parker. The Prime Minister's office didn't respond. The owner, Parker, owner of Nelson's Kaihu Kauri near Dargaville, told RNZ it was rude of people to criticise the PM's gift and suggest it be returned. Quote, to think that somebody can out the goodness of their heart, can out the goodness of their heart, give a gift to somebody, and then somebody comes in behind and says, well, that's wrong, it's illegal, it's immoral, or whatever they say. To me, that shows you the quality of the people actually. He said, to be quite blunt, these people, they're probably listed as zero, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned. I can pretty well describe these people to you. They probably don't do anything. They're parasites.
Oh, Jesus.
As far as I'm concerned, if they want to meddle in what we do, well, then it's not a wise thing to do. It's like
pseudo threat at the end.
Now, I want to go on and talk about an example of, when precious things get given, cultural things get given, what it can turn into. But first of all, should you jump in on that conversation in general? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it's great that it only takes one person to spin a headline like that. They found one person to say it's appalling. And I think that person is drawing a bit of a long bow in what they're saying. Hey, look, there are some issues around swamp kauri. There are people that have done environmental damage digging it out. There are very clear rules about if we're exporting it, let's not just send the whole log overseas, which I'm sure some people find loopholes because they want to. And then secondly, Parker sounds like a dick. Like he just sounds like a big old dick. If someone comes to you and say, hey, look, there's been some criticism of a gift that was apparently sourced from you, you just go, oh, well, moving on. I'm not going to sound like a complete psycho in the news. He had that opportunity and he turned it down.
You could respond, well, you should probably go talk to them about that.
Yeah.
They bought it off. I've got nothing to do with who someone gives a present to, but, thanks for your input. Now go and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But some real king shit just decided to go off and yeah, as you said, sounded like an unhinged talkback caller.
So here's an angle I want to put out there, right? And it kind of goes back to that idea. One of the comments, can I find that comment again? The bit where that was said about, it could create a demand for these things. Anyway, here's a picture for you, right? This is a true life story. Yeah. This is a bird that's extinct, New Zealand bird. It's called the huia. And when Charles Darwin was in New Zealand, they couldn't figure out why the male and female were so different. Because how these, they're developed and designed in a certain way or whatever, or evolve a certain way. They couldn't figure it out. So I'm pretty sure it's the female with a curved bill and the male with a straight bill. And they were an anomaly, right? They couldn't quite figure it out. Māori treated this bird as taonga, as sacred, as precious. They hunted them. They used their feathers, like the most precious cloaks that are still around today have huia feathers on them. Sometimes huia feathers got for sale in New Zealand. They could reach between $5,000 and $10,000 for a single feather. They're like really, really sought after. What happened as a part of it, you can never lay the full blame whatsoever into any one instance, because obviously deforestation had started happening, so habitat was disappearing. But in 1901, it was the Duke of York, right? The Duke and Duchess of York came to New Zealand, and there was a kaumātua, I think in Bay of Plenty, that gave him a huia feather. And you can see it there in his hat, right? That And it was given to him by Kaumātua because it's like, you are a chief, you are honorable, we want to honor you, so we're going to give you the symbol of this. So what happened next, of course, is photos went around the world, especially back to the UK, of this feather that the Duke of York had in his hat, which started a demand for wealthy British people and wealthy aristocrats around the world wanting this feather. 6 years later, the bird was extinct from hunting. 6 years, 1901 to 1907, it became extinct. Now, I don't think it's exactly the same as swamp coyote. It's not, but then again, I guess swamp coyote could disappear if it became it. And I don't think it's the same thing, because obviously we have a different understanding of what to do with our native resources. But it's not a story that has never been told before, that giving something to a high profile, powerful diplomat from overseas literally leads to the extinction of that treasure in this country. So it's a story that has happened before, and it's a story worth remembering, because what's that old saying? Something like, if you choose to ignore history, you're doomed to repeat it. So I get it. I hear what they're saying. I'm not saying it's a direct comparison, but I just think it's worth us knowing these stories as to how us who live here now have lost things in the past due to sort of exactly happening what's happened to Joe Biden.
Yep. I mean, I was just thinking there was another quite high profile thing that happened around swamp coyote about 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you remember when someone put a digger through the only fuel line that delivered jet fuel to Auckland?
All right.
Do you remember that?
No,
I think
not
it
a lot.
Please, someone in the chat correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding was it was a company connected to Judith Collins' husband that was harvesting swamp coyote, and managed to put a digger through the fuel line from Marsden Point to the airport, and there was talk of running out of jet fuel in New Zealand because that was the only pipeline for it.
Right.
So yeah, good times.
I like it. Someone said in the someone's gone Judith Collins. So someone's obviously said
okay, cool. Nice.
Marsden Point pipeline ruptured caused by digger looking for swamp coyote. There you go. There's the story there. So yeah, as soon as you mentioned Judith Collins and the husband, that started to ring more of a bell. So
yeah, look, some old wood, isn't it? We could have got some old wood from the beach and given it to Joe Biden.
I guess the thing is as well, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I love the idea of, kind of ancient trees that are here and that are in this land and that are still part of this land, be they swamp coyote that is felled or be they still standing. But I don't have the same spiritual connection to them that maybe Māori do, obviously, because they have a different way of looking at the land based on their 1,000-year history here, sort of thing. So there is a part of me, probably the western side of me, that kind of goes, it's making a nice bowl out of wood. What else would have happened with that? But I also got to go, I get, like the Huia story I told, I get that you need to be careful with this kind of thing, if for no other reason, for what it, if you give it a financial value, then people want to buy it, then there becomes a market for it, then it disappears. It's basically what happens.
I can certainly see both sides of it as well. I just wish that the both sides were not at the extreme ends of dickishness. It's
the news media, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, alrighty, right. Let's have a look at how should we do this? I'm just trying to think of all the stories I've got lined up. We'll do it. We'll start it here. We talked yesterday about actually you weren't here, True. You're welcome to share your thoughts on it. The infamous photo, the photo that's said a million words or whatever it is. Prime Minister at Parliament with 150-ish, 120 to 150 young people. Well, I think 120 young people, but 150 people overall. Maskless. The week after the government's begging us all to wear masks when we're indoors. Do you want to, because you weren't here last night, before I go into it, do you want to share any thoughts on that? Pro or con?
Yeah, I thought it was dumb. I thought it was super, super dumb. I I had seen comments from some of the youth MPs around it on Twitter that were saying, hey, look, we were wearing masks during the whole experience. They were really diligent in making sure that people wore masks, and then they took them off just for the photo op. Look, if it's a public photo op, in my opinion, they would have been better to leave it on. It sends a message. You know, you're talking about the leader of the country and potential young leaders. What better message than, yes, even at this very important thing, we left our masks on for the photo. You know, there could have been one without masks afterwards for the delegates to put in their CVs or whatever. But for the publicly released ones, it's super, super important that people see those. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago that we were lashing Luxon for going to Singapore and not wearing a mask when everybody else in the room was.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a misstep, and it's super dumb. Why did they do that? What were they thinking?
As we said earlier, you know, optics and ammunition. You know,
it's
politics
and publicity. Absolutely, yeah. It's a publicity photo. What are you wanting to publicize? Yes, we have the youth MPs, and yes, it is important to wear masks in a group. Both of those things are important. Both of them can be accomplished with one photo.
I said last night that I thought that the only thing that she should be doing now is a bit of a mea culpa. You know, it's like, I was wrong, made a mistake, moving on. She didn't quite do that, but we do have her response. There was a local government kind of like, you know, everyone comes to the hotel and the names jumped out of my head. My dyslexia has kicked in. Conference, that'll do. Conference, and she spoke at that about this, and she gave it a reason. We're going to get to that shortly. But one of the things that was interesting is that she found some unusual allies in this whole thing. So, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Nicola Willis.
What do you think? Is this forgive and forget, or are we going all out with this one?
I think we just need to give the Prime Minister a break. Who among us hasn't taken off our mask to pose for a photo? And actually, I'm sure, just like all of the youth MPs, she's been wearing her mask around Parliament. She took it off for a moment. I'm pretty relaxed about that.
Now, gotta say, refreshing comment. Now, yes. I innately have a distrust of why it's refreshing, but we say all the time, if something is going to be warranting a positive response, then we give it. Refreshing, right? That this is just not a pile on. And actually, I think I heard Christopher Luxon saying the same sort of thing yesterday. But part of that reason, I guess, is because they don't. But then again, they're not the government also saying, wear your mask. Like someone last night gave us some pushback going, you know, why aren't we criticizing Luxon? And it's like, well, we have. But in this instance, it's not Luxon's party who are setting the agenda for the country to please wear masks and then not doing it themselves. So there's a slight difference there. But overall, refreshing comment. There's more of this to play, Chewy, but do you want to jump in before I push play?
I was just saying, if I was Arden watching this, I'd be going, oh, damn, Willis is on my side. I definitely got it wrong. Definitely got it wrong.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Like if a white supremacist said, yes, no, we totally want to support that person, you'd be like, holy shit, what have I done?
No, I'm out.
not connecting Nicola Willis, by the way, to white supremacy. I'm just saying, if some abhorrent person wanted to back you, you'd have to wonder why they're backing you. Let's just play another 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, to be honest with you. I think it's something we've probably all done or would do.
Yeah, that's right. And look, most of the time, she'll be role modelling good behaviour with her mask, and around Parliament, we all are. So for a moment in a photo, when the photographer says, can you take your mask off? Most of us think, yeah, I'll show people my smile.
Now, are you only saying this because you have also done the same thing? Do you know what I mean?
Well, there is an element of that. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite because certainly I've posed for photos without my mask on, and I probably will do so again. But when I'm inside, I follow the rules. When I'm at events, I follow the rules, and she's not actually breaking a rule in that photo.
No, because it's not the law, is it?
No.
Although I think the Speaker's making it the law in his building.
Well, look, he's pretty clear that when we're walking around the building, we should have our masks on, and we do.
So there you go. Now, I just did think for the very first time, as we have a show that does quite a whole lot of stream of consciousness, I just wonder, you know how like we talk about American politics and we talk about how like the Republicans fight up against Democrats and Democrats against Republicans, until it comes to a point where they find common ground. Like, so for example, when it comes to wealth, because they're all wealthy. I just thought to have Ryan Bridge, Luxon, Nicola Willis, the Prime Minister, all these people kind of going, oh, you know, it's just a photo. I just wonder if there's a connecting thing between all of them of privilege that's just like, it's no big deal. You know what I mean? I wonder if there's a connecting thing there, which is pretty icky. But if that's the reason.
Here's my thing with it: like MPs travel around, they meet with a lot of people. They're also leaders that are supposed to be showing. You know, if you're a leader, you lead. You show what is expected. There's two really good reasons why they should maybe not take a mask off during a photo shoot. It's important to see these people are not immune from wearing a mask. It's important that these people that circulate around and talk to a lot of people are protecting themselves and protecting the people that they meet. I don't like the double standard. I really, really don't like it. I don't need to see Ardern's face or Willis's face or Luxon's face. I know who they are.
Yeah.
You know, I would rather see those people going, look, we all need to do this, and here is evidence that we do it too.
Yeah.
You know, people might write it off as a small thing. I don't think it's a small thing.
The advice has also been quite a lot recently talking about, you know, airborne and aerosols that are out there. Yeah. And like they have to have a line in their sand somewhere. So what they do is they take the 95 percentile and below, and they basically go, you know, if you're in a room with someone for more than 15 minutes, unmasked, and there's no airflow, that's the risk. The risks go up. But I'm pretty sure it was News Hub, and it might even come up in the story that we're going to play about Three Waters, because it's kind of a Three Waters / no mask for Jacinda conversation. But they started to talk to some people about what actual aerosols are. And this is something that I haven't heard before, although I understand it might only take one drop from someone walking past. But when the government talks or public health officials talk, they talk about how to protect the bulk of the people by taking, you know, by taking the smallest amount of risk. Anyway, by addressing what's the 95% chance rather than the 99th percentile. Yeah. And I'm saying 95% as in, you know, the biggest chunk, acknowledging there might be some outliers as well. The outliers say something like this. This is speaking to Dr. Rindlord, who is an aerial transmission specialist. Speaking generally about the aerial transmission of viruses like SARS-2, COVID-2, Dr. Rindlord said that every time an infected person breathes out, talks or coughs, it expels thousands of tiny little droplets that are so small you can't even see. They're just going to hang out in the air. If you're near someone who is infected, you're going to be breathing in their exhaled spit particles. More or less, you're going to be breathing in their exhaled breath. So that's how the infection spreads through what we know as aerosol transmissions. There's a higher risk that this happens indoors due to the lack of fresh airflow, he said. While other factors like ventilation can also make a difference, but there is evidence that the virus can be spread within a matter of seconds, Dr. Rindlord told News Hub. The longer that you don't have on a mask, the greater your chance of exposure, but it could very likely happen in less time than you would imagine. There is always a risk whenever you aren't wearing a mask indoors when we have such high levels of community transmission. Yep. I just thought that idea of seconds, and as I said, I'm pretty sure the TV3 article that we're going to play mentions it as well, but I haven't. I mean, I guess I know, like in my brain head, that it only takes one breath to take in someone else's breath, but I don't think I've heard that message coming from a podium or coming from a article or coming from an academic that it only takes seconds to breathe in. And so if you take your mask off for, let's be realistic, 45 seconds for a photo, you know, including the kind of getting it out of the way and putting it in your pocket and then standing and then posing and then smiling, that's a good number of seconds to possibly either get infected or asymptomatically infect someone else.
I mean, David in the comments mentioned it. Why didn't they have it outside? Why don't you take the photo on the Parliament steps or something like that? You know, there wouldn't be a criticism at that point. But
yeah,
you know,
and even if it was windy, that would be a good thing for for protection, because that's the thing. Breeze makes a big difference, being able to move particles around in a way.
Yep, absolutely.
So, now, we want to get onto a second part of this conversation, and it's about our good mate, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield. Now, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield has also done a little bit of a do as I say, not as I do, but it's kind of reversed. I'll let Tova explain.
Dr. Ashley Bloomfield and the unusual case of do as I say and not as I do. The good doctor was due a massive farewell knees up last night, well deserved after a few mammoth years, but instead it's been downgraded, or it was downgraded to a much smaller do, with many of the participants relegated to Zoom. And yet, although Dr. Bloomfield, who determines the health advice and determines the government's COVID response, although he doesn't think it's appropriate or safe to have a big gathering right now, he's not advising the government to impose any gathering limits for the rest of us. Now, usually, do as I say and not as I do kind of works the opposite way. You preach good behaviour while behaving badly, but in typical Bloomfield fashion, he is still the saint in this scenario. But it does make you wonder why, if gatherings aren't safe or appropriate for MPs, dignitaries, officials right now, why it's okay for the rest of us to mingle, transmit and get sick. Now,
So, just to be really clear, so it's reversed. So, Ashley Bloomfield, I mean, maybe he has advised the government this. That's probably the one thing that might be unfair from Tova, might be, because we don't know. But there's no public advice to avoid these large gatherings, right? But Ashley Bloomfield is avoiding a large gathering. So the do as I say, not as I do thing here is not like a Boris Johnson, where he's saying, oh, don't go to large gatherings, and he has one. It's the opposite. It's like, yeah, you guys go and get sick to each other. I'm not gonna. So the question needs to be raised. If Ashley Bloomfield thinks this isn't safe enough for him and his guests and the people around him, why is the government allowing the rest of us to do it?
Yep, absolutely. We don't deserve Ashley Bloomfield. I'm not surprised that he's going, because Jesus, the sort of shit that he's put up with, and while doing an amazing job. But yeah, I mean, he's right, isn't he? He's going to know better than anyone that we've got a rise in cases, and it's borne out over a very, very infectious variant.
Yeah.
And he's gone, yeah, no, pass, thanks. I think we'll just sink some drinks on Zoom, maybe play a little bit of charades or something like that. I don't know. I don't float in those circles.
He's probably sick to high hello looking at them all. I've been around you guys enough. That'll do.
Yeah, I'm just going to go and duct tape my doors and windows shut, and you'll never see me again.
But this is what we've been talking about a lot, and with guests who have been coming on. Like, the advice that the government is giving us is not the advice that those people are following, and is not the advice that the academic scientists and epidemiologists are saying. So it feels a little bit like, like the NRA after the Uvalde shooting, they had their conference in the area and they didn't allow guns to come. Like, well, hang on. If you don't allow guns to come to your conference, why is that? If guns make freedom, the president of the United States they never allow guns into where they're doing their speeches. It's like you're telling everyone else that these things are great, and the best defense against a person with a bad gun is a person with a good gun. You know what I mean? But then they won't do it themselves. That's the do as I say, not as I do. This is sort of the reverse, but it is actually the same thing. You guys go out and have mass gatherings and get sick, and like George told us the last 2 weeks in a row, he's gone to see the rugby, the All Blacks at a pub, no masks and their sort of thing. But those who are making the decisions and those who are advising those making decisions are not doing what the rest of us are doing.
Yeah, I mean, the people that we've spoken to on the show and the things that they've said, look, I've got as I was saying before we went on air, I've got a comedy gig on tomorrow night. And that's probably my first event in front of an audience for a long, long time. And, there's a band on tour that's that I want to see in a month or so. And I'm sitting here going, as much as I'd like to see that band, do I really want to go and stand in a hot, sweaty room other people. You know, I did that a few weeks ago when I went up to Wellington, and I as much as I enjoyed that show, I do feel like I dodged a bullet.
You're right.
You know, with best intentions, the mask just didn't stay on. So yeah, as much as I say that I'm careful with a mask, you know, there's times where that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. Let's finish up this conversation with Tova, because she goes on to talk about what we've just been saying about, you know, he's following the advice. He's giving himself advice that the government refuses to give to us.
It strikes me as strange that our number one health official, who really, really doesn't want people to get COVID, that he won't offer advice to the government akin to the advice that he's personally following himself.
Just to be fair, that's unfair. We don't know if he's offering that advice or not. All we know is that the advice that he's following, the government is not offering us. He may be offering that advice, which would be the fair way to say this. No criticism of Tova, but just to be blunt, and they might be choosing to ignore it. Just to put that out there.
Off mask wearing and gathering limits. And where it doesn't make sense is how that relatively relaxed approach, where it also doesn't make sense, is where that relatively relaxed approach to mask wearing and gatherings, where it sits alongside our relatively restrictive vaccination and isolation policies. On vaccines, as I've said before, I'm super keen to get my second booster. If I lived in Australia, I would be able to get it. It's available to 30 to 49-year-olds if they want it as well. Here, it's 50-plussers that are eligible. We're also still doing 7 days isolation in New Zealand, so our household contacts, unless they've recently had COVID. In the United States, it's 5 days. In the UK, there's no requirement to self-isolate anymore. Again, not necessarily advocating for shorter isolation, just making the point there no longer appears to be any logic to the COVID response. No one really seems to have any clue anymore about the restrictions or the rationale. Nothing makes a lot of sense, but the death toll is still rising. 1,252 people with lives, families, friends have died. Everyone wants different or varying COVID responses, but unlike the early days of the pandemic, the government and officials now seem to be just as clueless and all over the shop as the rest of us.
So
that's a very, very well said point.
Yeah. But I disagree with Tova in that I don't think the government is clueless as the rest of us. I think they're making a choice to make a less invasive legislative move as a populist thing so they don't get hit in the polls. But I don't think they are clueless. I think everybody knows. I mean, if you speak to any epidemiologist, any scientist, any person working on this, they'll all tell you the same thing. So I know what I'm not saying that the commentary is wrong, but I'm saying that I think that the truth is we all know that they're not clueless. They're making choices that are politically expedient.
Yeah, I think it's for me personally, it's a contrast between the very, very clear messaging that we had, say, last year about what was happening and how it was getting communicated out and all of that sort of stuff. And it was, you know, it was a blunt tool. It was a sledgehammer. Stay in your fucking house until we tell you to come out. You know, but that's how important it was. And now we've got to a point where it's like, well, you know, we've told you everything that you need to do. And you seem to be getting annoyed when we remind you. So you're on your own. And all it is news media outlets and that sort of thing reporting that the hospitals are getting crushed, criticizing people for not wearing masks in a photo. And, you know, we're going to be dealing with this for a while now. You know, the flights are coming in. Variants that have been allowed to mutate in other areas are just as likely to come here now, and it's not going to get better. It's depressing because we, you know, for a while it felt like we won.
Yeah, well, we did.
We won the jackpot. We did everything right.
Yeah, but I mean, like, the only problem, and it's not a problem, but the reality is, I was just thinking as you were talking, I wonder, and I'm not suggesting that I want to see this or it's going to happen, but if we went into like another month-long lockdown, like if the country chose to do that, what would happen? And the reality is, unless you also close the borders, kind of nothing.
Yeah,
you might drop the numbers, and it might, you know, drop right down to net, but then it's going to climb again, because as soon as you're accessing the external world who's not doing what you're doing, it's gonna be like that anyway. So it almost feels like we're at a point now where, I mean, I prefer. I'm leaning towards the side of being a bit more conservative with my choices. I'm not stopping doing anything, but when I go out, I'm wearing a mask and that kind of stuff. But it feels like I want the government either to get on board with the messaging that the epidemiologist is saying, or get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah.
And then basically wild west. I've got a family member who just went to Queensland a couple of weeks ago, and they were like, they didn't think about COVID. No one was wearing masks. Everyone was just having fun. And basically people are being told, look after yourself. So it feels like we're in that middle ground where the government's trying to protect us, help us make good choices, like public health choices, but they're not actually going far enough to make the difference. They're going far enough as they think they can without pissing off too many people to affect them in the polls. And I'm like, either go the whole hog because you believe in the public health, or get the fuck out of the way and just let people do what they want to do. Like, I don't think the middle ground. It's that jack of all trades but master of none being stuck in the middle.
That's like cigarettes and alcohol, isn't it? It's like any public health measure. We're telling you this is bad, and we've put in some policies to restrict it and to make it less likely that someone's going to do this. But at the end of the day, if you want to smoke, you're going to smoke. If you want to drink to excess, you're going to do it. Yeah, we're definitely at that point of like, yeah, look after yourself, make your own choices, and it's so different. It's so different. But I understand. I don't necessarily agree, but I understand where it's coming from. They couldn't maintain. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, try as you might.
We're going to move on. It's sort of a move on. This is quite a nice segue, because this is actually a story about the Three Waters, the local government conference. But within this story, they talk about, the Prime Minister couldn't get away from that photo yesterday. So you also get a response from the Prime Minister in this story about the maskless thing as well. So we want to talk about Three Waters, which is where we're going now. But there's also a response in this about the maskless thing as well. So let's have a look at this, and then we'll have a chat about Three Waters.
The rain was pouring in Palmy today, but that didn't dampen the spirits of those protesting outside this year's local government New Zealand conference. The group angry over the government's Three Waters reforms.
Three Waters is a disaster.
That topic also dominating conversations inside the venue.
You cannot avoid it.
And does take up a lot of council's time.
Central Hawke's Bay Mayor Alex Walker is worried her smaller rural towns will get left behind when water governance becomes more centralised.
We have remote communities like Porongaho on the coast. They're really worried that they won't get responsiveness from a really big entity.
While Lower Hutt's mayor says things have gotten out of hand, both with the country's water infrastructure and the country's water debate.
My approach has always been get around the table and try and make it better, because the status quo simply is not an option.
But Three Waters wasn't the controversy which dogged the Prime Minister today. Instead, it was her decision to post this photo to her 1.7 million Instagram followers, unmasked, standing in a crowd of more than 100 indoors. On the same day, the Ministry of Health rolled out a campaign to encourage more masking.
Wear a mask. Bingo, there you are, ready to go.
I accept the point that we are role models. We will from time to time make mistakes, but we are ultimately still role models.
Ardern's predecessor, Helen Clark, also weighed in with a tweet asking what on earth are they thinking? New Zealand is in the middle of a pandemic surge. Winston Peters, even stronger, tweeting, define hypocrisy.
I, from time to time, actually do get asked to take my mask off for photos, and in the future, I'll be more vigilant about politely declining.
No apology for the post, but a tightening up of her own masking habits.
So we've got more to play on this as we get back to the Three Waters, but there's her response. She's acknowledged that it was a mistake and she won't do it again, but no apology. Chew, is that enough?
Yeah, I think I'm happy with that response. I mean, I think, yeah, there's an acknowledgement there that she kind of fucked up. So we'll see.
I don't want to sound too precious, and I know that there'll be some people out there who think I am sounding precious, but for those of this is how I personally feel. For those of us who have been talking about this, and Chewy, since we went into Orange, I've been saying, what the fuck are you doing in schools? They should still be masked. This is what the government is saying. This is what the epidemiologists are saying. For those of us that have been pushing it, I found that a bit of a punch in the gut yesterday. I'm just like, we've been banging. Some of us have been banging this drum that you guys have been telling us to do. All you needed to do to show the world that you're on board with us is wear a fucking mask in their photo. So, no apology. Fair enough. It's always hard for a for a politician to say sorry because then they admit fault, and then again that's ammunition and optics. But I guess when you've already given ammunition and optics yesterday with a photo, maybe an apology would have been good optics today. Might have still given ammunition, but maybe it would have given good optics. But maybe I'm just being a bit precious, perhaps, and I acknowledge that. Let's get to the end of the Three Water stuff.
So, Imogen, the PM's getting a bit of flack for her maskless photo, but she's also found an unlikely ally.
Oh, let's not watch this. This just talks about Nicola Willis. It talks about Nicola. Well, look, I can show you. It just talks about Nicola Willis, and then they share the thing that I was talking about to do with. It could only take 2 seconds to catch it. That's pretty much all they say in this last bit because I said it was coming. So let's leave that and let's move into Three Waters because local body politics are coming up, and for those of you who are in Dunedin, we have a plan to host all the mayoralty candidates. Is it mayoralty? Mayor?
Yeah,
the candidates
mayoralties. Yep.
Now we have a plan probably in the weekends leading up to the election to host all the mayoralty candidates in the conversation. It'll be Dunedin only. I would talk to any mayor about local body stuff, but obviously there's literally going to be hundreds, if not thousands of them around the country, but certainly hundreds. And for people who are in Dunedin, as we're based in Dunedin, we have a plan to do some local body stuff, not necessarily in this time frame, but probably on the weekends on like a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon, where we're going to spend some time talking to some of our local body candidates here in Dunedin. But what's happening now is that obviously mayors are having to put their stake in the ground over Three Waters. They're either having to go, yes, I support it, or no, I don't, because it's becoming a pretty big issue. Now, this is my dyslexia kicking in here, Chewy, but it took me about 5 minutes to figure out this fucking headline. Three Waters, Gore, Clutha, and Central Otago mayors put jobs on the line by refusing to reject reforms. So that means they're accepting. So they're putting their jobs on the line by accepting the reforms. So basically, they're in regions where a lot of people are saying no to Three Waters, and they're refusing to reject it. So what they're saying is they are supportive of the reforms, and that's causing them to put their jobs on the line. But News Hub,
you got to get that negative in there. You got to get that negative.
Yeah. A couple of items from this clip. Many of the voters in Gore, Clutha, and the Central Otago vehemently oppose the changes which shift drinking waste and stormwater management from 67 councils to 4 mega entities. Look, I have to see. I feel a bit dumb now because I'm going to say something. I didn't think it included sewage because it says waste. I thought waste was grey water, was like baths and was like
I think it comes
machines and
the same.
Yeah. Okay.
Stormwater, wastewater, sewage.
Okay.
All right. Comes under that umbrella.
All right, Clutha District Mayor, yada, 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 and Central Otago Mayor Tim Cadigan are standing by their decision to be a part of the working group advising the government on the reforms. Former Central Otago Mayor Malcolm McPherson, who lost the mayoralty in 2010, due largely to him pushing through water meters, just happened here in Dunedin, is also backing their stance, but expects a significant number of single-issue candidates may run for council because they oppose the Three Waters reform. That's going to be interesting. So if you get a mayor who is pro Three Waters, and you've got 12 councillors, of which 10 of them have said, I'm anti-Three Waters. What's going to happen then? It's going to make for an interesting time. Gore District Mayor Tracy Hicks, just so you know, no offence intended, Tracy is a male. I'm just saying because the name is quite confusing to me as well. Running for his 7th term in October, also backs their decision, saying being in the tent is the most productive way to influence change. He has been popular running unopposed in 2019, 2013, 2010, and winning by a large majority in 2016 and 2007. But at a meeting in Gore last month, organised by who? By Groundswell, he was booed and heckled as he told the crowd affecting change meant working with the government. So you work with the government for the betterment of your area and you get
What
booed.
a controversial statement. No wonder he was booed. He should have been executed in the town square. He's right. Like, why would you shut the door on this? There is so much politicizing about this with so little understanding of what it actually is. Taxpayers Union are running the Stop Three Waters campaign. They've also been behind Groundswell as well, and it's heavily targeted at rural voters that don't like Labor anyway. And I'm just really worried that that people that just notice that, oh, there's a fair bunch of people that don't like this. Maybe I don't like this either, without reading it, without understanding what it covers.
Jacinda, bloody Cindy can go home. Bloody anything. Bloody.
Exactly. I mean, I saw a friend of mine on Twitter. He was making he was trying to draw an analogy of the Ashburton Council asking the government for help with the flooding that they've just hit up there recently. And he goes, aren't they against Three Waters? But they've got their hand out now. And it's like, well, no, this wouldn't have anything to do with Three Waters. It has nothing to do with the rivers. You know, so there's so much misunderstanding and misinformation out there.
So if you're a ratepayer, this is something like, because I said when we started talking about this a couple of weeks ago, the one hole I could see in the giving up your control, and I think we talked about Whangarei had something like 1.2 between 600 million and 1.2 billion dollars worth of assets in their pipes, and the government was offering them something like 133 million. So it seemed like a bad deal. And I, without knowing too much about it, I said, well, let's look more into this, because one of the issues could be if you're giving up assets that the council and the ratepayers could borrow against to actually do something local, then that's a conversation to be had. Yeah. So here's an example of why some of these guys, and we're only talking about Otago because these are the examples given. It's not because we're in Dunedin. This is just, if this had been Hawke's Bay, we would have been talking about Hawke's Bay, but it's what's been done. So here's some of the reasons that some of these guys are supporting this. And this is from, this is from Tracy. Our mate Tracy. He says this: everyone's a bit agitated at the moment about life in general. And it doesn't take too much to get people particularly agitated when they think they're losing something that's an asset and they're going to have to pay a whole lot more for it. So I'm not surprised at that sort of response. His district needs to spend more than $300 million on Three Water infrastructure in the next decade or so. Right? So forget Three Waters, upgrades, repairs. You know, I guess it is upgrades, isn't it? When you've got a bigger population, they need to spend $300 million in the next decade. So $30 million a year. That equates to $50,000 per ratepayer. So all these people from Groundswell and all these people who have been booing them at the thing, if they're prepared to put their hands in the pocket, right, for several $1,000s extra per year, so that's $5,000 extra per year per ratepayer, then I guess there's no problems. But that's the reality of it. Or I guess the other reality of it is a crumbling infrastructure that then requires $1 billion to be spent on it because it's not working. Hicks said that it was unaffordable and something had to change, even if the change was not popular. For probably the thick end of the last 50 or 60 years, the underinvestment in our water and particularly waste infrastructure has been not one of the highlights of New Zealand, put it that way. He had called for a national referendum on the government's proposal, but recognised his council and others were in over their heads when it came to Three Waters. It was an unpopular stance in his district, but he was not alone in the view. So here's the thing, right? We talked about if a government had to give up its assets, and remember, I'm not well informed on this, but I'm just using a little bit of logic here. If I own a house that's worth $600,000, but I have a mortgage on that house worth $3 million, then that's not an asset, that's a liability. So if you've got $300 million worth of work that needs to happen to these pipes, it doesn't say what they're worth, but let's say they're worth $150 million. That's the asset worth. Then it's actually not an asset, it's a liability. And the government's saying, hey, we'll take the liability off you and we'll fix it all up. I mean, that doesn't seem to be a terrible, I mean, and the ratepayers don't have it. Taxpayers will have it, but the whole country will then bear that burden equally.
Yeah, and I think that the flip side of the coin is also relevant. And I get where the councils that have managed these things well have invested the time and the money into maintaining their water infrastructure kind of feel like they're getting penalized because town down the road did a shitty job and everybody's got E. coli in their tap water. You know, Dunedin has massively underinvested for decades in it. We would benefit from this, I would hope, and certainly that's why a lot of the councillors like, shit, so we don't have to worry about this anymore. Yes, please. Yeah, please take it away. But I've got a friend who works in the Waimakariri council, and he said that we've done such a good job on it on our infrastructure. We dealt with everything after the earthquakes, and now it just feels like it's taken off us. And I get that feeling. I just want to draw attention to David's comments in the chat about his major complaint is the split into the big local regions, which is exactly what the government is trying to undo with the DHB. I hadn't seen that thought before. I think it's a good one. Are they recreating a problem?
The point you made about the point you just made about councils that are onto it, like, it sounds to me like a similar sort of argument that's like, oh, I make a lot of money, and if they raise the tax rates, what's the point? What's the incentive for me to earn lots of money? And I'm like, well, the incentive is you still have a lot more money. And yes, some of the areas who are on top of their three waters infrastructure may not see the investment today, but if this is something that lasts the next 100 years, they will.
Yeah.
And it just feels like those cities and stuff should be happy for what they've done and what they've got if they are indeed working. I'm sure that not everywhere's got a perfect solution already, and there's going to be some infrastructure changes for everyone on some level. And so be it. This is how we have a functioning country, where we're only as strong as our weakest link. And if we need to band together, like as a country, to, it costs us an extra cent or two, out of every $100 to fund Gore getting their stuff sorted out, or Hawke's Bay getting their stuff sorted out, or the far north getting their stuff sorted out, and we have a better functioning country overall. Also think about this, Chewy, especially if people are a bit younger and not retired, you could live anywhere in 5 or 10 years' time. So what if you are in a part of the country right now that's got good infrastructure, but, in 5 years' time, for whatever reason, you move to a country the part of the country that doesn't? Well, then this will help that situation as well.
I mean, my understanding is the big benefit between doing this is it creates a big pool of assets that can be borrowed against to fund a whole lot of improvements to it. And it makes it a much more streamlined way of doing it than having, 50, 60 local councils trying to do the same thing and just failing at it, as many of them have done. It's just interesting. I think there's a whole lot of other nastier parts of it that are trapped in this debate.
Right.
I think you got the taxpayers union astroturfing the shit out of everything. I wonder about groundswell and that sort of thing. I just want to go through and go, how many of these farmers are on a town water supply? How is it affecting them, or are they just against any sort of government regulation, and this is the one that they've latched onto now?
I spoke to local national MP this week, and as I was talking to him, as I was watching the interview back, I kind of, sometimes you go, oh shit, I should have asked that. I didn't think of that. But as I was watching back the interview, I thought of something. And you can put groundswell in there. You can put the taxpayers union in there. You can put National and ACT in there, who are all calling for things like, 15,000 new bureaucrats in Wellington. They need to go. Bureaucracies are too big, right? And in this instance, when there will be fewer people running these stormwater drains, these three waters things. In other words, we're shrinking bureaucrats in this, because rather than every council having a number of people that are running these and looking after these, rather than every council having to do contracts or get different workers in to fix them and stuff, it'll be centralized on some level. Well, 4 centrals, which means fewer people, which should mean less cost to run. And it seems like the same people who are saying smaller government's better government now are advocating for bigger government when it comes to three waters. It's almost like they're disingenuous. It's almost like they find a narrative just to further their cause and say this government's shit, rather than actually sticking by what they believe. Because this to me seems to be, and I know people are going to say the bureaucracy that will come with it, but compared to a 60-ish councils, this will be smaller government. So why are they all fighting it?
Do you know what I reckon? Bring back the Ministry of Works.
I remember them.
Hey, you want something done? We
You
have
know
a
what?
department for that.
Why I remember them is I remember my old man used to have his office was in Monaco Road in Epsom in Auckland on the main drag, just opposite the racecourse. And a Ministry of Works truck sideswiped his car, parked out the front. And they had so many accidents that they had a sheet, like a tear pad, that had all the details pre-written into it about the accident was at time, the accident driver was. So they had obviously some kind of, they had so many accidents in their vehicles that they had pre-printed stuff to leave under the window wiper of the car they had hit, so they could do it. So that's the thing I remember when I was a young fella at the Ministry of Works. Hey, look, before we go, and you might think this is contrary to our conversation, but these guys that we've been talking about, what is it, Stop Three Waters? I want to play this. This is their advert. And I don't really have too much to add to it, but just to let people what they're saying about it as well.
In the middle of a pandemic, the government have decided they want to seize your local water assets and put them into the hands of unelected, co-governed entities.
Just remember, potentially liabilities for lots of councils as well. I said I wouldn't want to talk to it, but assets that have more of a debt against them than what they're worth are actually a debt. So that, in other words, the government could be taking a debt off your region as well, technically.
They're calling these reforms Three Waters, but won't tell you the three dangerous consequences of higher water costs.
Says who? Says who?
Unnecessary bureaucracy.
That says who? In fact, potentially fewer people running the thing.
And no local control.
And the other thing about unnecessary bureaucracy, if you're changing how something runs, then there is new necessary bureaucracy. What they think that they're going to make a change and there'll be no change to the bureaucracy. What? What are you talking about?
Oh, councils across New Zealand and independent analysis have said no.
So did you get that? Councils across New Zealand and independents have said no. Do you see these headlines, right? See these headlines? Remember what they said? Councils across New Zealand and independent analysis. This headline here, Three Waters reform process, not the New Zealand way. So of course, as a good researcher, I went and found the story. Three Waters reform process, not the New Zealand way. This is the exact September 29.
What does that even mean?
But the thing is, this is one person's opinion, right? A guy called whose credentials is experienced company director John Palmer. This is the person who I've highlighted it down here, who says this is not the New Zealand way. He's an experienced company director, and that's enough of a headline for the Stop Three Waters, to use this as see what people are saying, see what everyone's saying. These people see what they're saying. One company director. Now, I'm not saying there aren't others that say it, but it's hardly a compelling argument to say that one old dude thinks this.
Is this company make water filters? Maybe,
possibly. We'll see.
No to these reforms. Three Waters, zero gain. Get the facts at stop3waters.nz and tell them no.
There you go. There's your Winston Peters finish. Just say no. Now, look, as a heads up, what I would like to do is I would like to try and do a special on Friday night, which is a Three Waters special. Now, it means I'm going to be trying to organize it on Thursday. It doesn't mean it's going to work necessarily, but if I can get these guys from Stop Three Waters on, and maybe I can get someone who is an advocate for the Three Waters change, then we'll see if we can have a bit of a chat about it. Now, the other thing I might try and do if I can't find that is maybe try and find a couple of mayors from around the country. Maybe one mayor who's going to be supportive of Three Waters and one who's not. But what I'd like to do, and I know that I sound very opinionated, that's just, it kind of comes with the territory with me, I guess, because there is lots of stuff I don't know and don't understand. I'm perfectly happy to admit that. So I think what we could do is get some people on to actually have a what's good, what's bad, why do you support, why don't you support, what's going on, and see what they've got to say about it. So I'm going to attempt to do that on Friday night. Now, tomorrow is Thursday. I don't know if I'll have the time to organize it, but I think often on Friday nights we try and have a singular issue if we can, and I'm going to see if I can get some people around to have a bit of a chat about it, to flesh it out a bit more, because when I say if your pipe's worth 150 million, but you have to spend 300 million, that's not an asset. That's a liability. That's a debt. The thing is, I don't know what the pipes are worth. So I can't, this is just a question. I can't actually make that argument, but the mayor from that area probably can. Because
look, I think that's a core issue. Like, I mean, it seems now people are really het up about their pipes and stuff like that. Whereas for decades earlier, nobody gives a shit, and what they want is lower rates at all costs.
Yeah.
So, it just seems, it's under the street. It's out of view, out of mind.
Yeah.
And now it's not. So,
Do we need
it'd be great
to
if we could get some people on?
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. I'm going to spend all day in the studio tomorrow, and probably most of Friday as well. I've put all my other work aside, and I'll see if I can get that sorted out for y'all. Now, as I'm saying that, Chewy, is there anything other people agree? Awesome idea for a debate. We'll see if we can make it happen. I'm not promising anything, but I'm telling you my intentions so you can see me fail. Probably a bad idea, but I'll just say that's what we're going to try and do. I mean, I haven't really been reading the text, although Ludwig Drummer does seem to be a bit of a comedian. Do you know Ludwig Drummer? Because there are been some very funny comments in here tonight. Let me just go back. Don't take offense anyone to these comments, because I think they're kind of hilarious, because I know how to laugh. Someone said, right here, the PM should get that mole on her ear checked. And Ludwig said, maybe the mole should get his Prime Minister checked. Which I like a lot. So we've got a resident. Actually, that means we've got two resident comedians. Sorry, Chewy. I mean, if people are in Dunedin, where are you going to be tomorrow night? Do you want to tell people, or are you worried about?
Yeah, so talking about holding yourself accountable to see if you fail or not. This will be the first time I've done stand-up comedy in about a year, and I don't want to do my old material, so I've put myself under the gun and said I'm going to do new material. At this stage, I don't know what that is. And the gig's tomorrow at Dish.
Sounds like it sounds like every show we do. Sounds like every that sounds like 5 to 10 every night, bro. Don't know what we're going to do yet.
Oh, look, last time I tried to wing a show, it worked out pretty well. But are the gods with me this time? Who knows? But yes, it's 9 Stafford Street at a place called Dish. They do a comedy show there once a month, and it is at 7:30. And it is well worth getting there early, because the cafe that it's at does a mean Mexican feed.
Ooh,
so I'm going to be there early.
Cool, man. All right, dude. Hey, well, thank you for tonight. Thank you for joining us tonight, guys. As I said, I will do my darndest. I will work bloody hard to try and do something for Three Waters for Friday night. I would really like to get a couple of people on, because I feel like I've got a grasp of the basics. But as Chewy was kind of saying before about farmers and being on bore water or tank water, and, what is actually the concerns of many, because the only concern I can see is if local assets lose the ability to borrow against those assets. I mean, the whole thing about why we don't have control. You don't have control of your local police either. You know what I mean? There's lots of things that you don't have local control over. I don't see that
you have the same control. The control is, if you don't like what someone has done over the last 4 years, you vote them out.
Yeah.
And that's the same whether it's local politics or national level. That is the control that people have, that they can get angry, they can go on the internet, they can vote someone out. It's not like you can go down to the council and go, I demand better pipes in my street. You've got to get enough people to do that and join in with you. That's democracy.
I feel very left out sometimes when I'm looking at the chat, Chewy. What the hell's this conversation around thermite going on in the chat that I'm not a part of?
Not thermite, because we're not terrorists. Do you know what a thermet is?
No.
So it's a New Zealand invention, I believe, and I was under the impression it's a story
thermite,
I've always
burning
heard.
down 9/11, burning down the Twin Towers with thermite.
No, a thermet is it's a way of boiling water very quickly. It's like a jug, like a kettle, but it's a chimney on the inside.
Okay.
Right, so it's hollow. You fill out the outer jacket with water, and then you light a fire in the middle. And the story that I'd always got told is that it was the ministry or workers for the Ministry of Works on the railways and that sort of thing that invented it as a way of having tea breaks while they're out working. The people in the chat are just correcting me that it was actually a private businessman. So that's that little myth that I was very happy with.
So in other words, because, and I've got this image up on screen, because it's a larger surface area for the heat, because the surface area will be going in the chimney up the middle, and all the water will be around the outside. heats it more quickly. Is that what we're
It
saying?
boils incredibly quickly.
Mm.
I had one when I went on bush hikes and stuff like that. It's a great little piece of kit to have.
Aren't you supposed to put the billy on the something or other? Is that how we're supposed to when you
well,
take something?
that's exactly it. But instead of just boiling a big pot, you're using science and thermodynamics.
Oh my God. Look, this is what we always do. We try and finish a show and we can't. 100th episode on Monday. We were supposed to be doing conspiracy theory night. Are we on track for any of that stuff? What are we doing? I've done nothing on it.
Well, I did a big list of conspiracies. And I think we're going to try and rope in some of the you sent out the email the other day.
Oh yeah, some people will be coming and visiting us, but that doesn't mean that I don't know about the actual I don't know about the actual content for the night. But yeah, we'll have some of the other guys jumping in, and one of my reasons I'm going to spend the next 2 days in the studio working is I'm going to contact some of those academics who have been, or guests who have been with us several times, like Anna Brooks and like Marty Lloyd and like Robert Patman, and see if they want to duck in as well for the 100th episode and stuff. No, you get me on the 9/11 one, man. I've done a debate where I've had one of the engineers who was on the ground of 9/11 the day after, and a guy who was part of the team to make the Loose Change documentary. So I've had those two people on the phone doing a debate on 9/11 when I was working for ZB. You'll get. I'm down for that conversation as well. I love them. So what am I? My conspiracies that I love talking about, probably 9/11, probably flat Earth. Actually, maybe they're the main ones. I mean, JFK is interesting. Moon landing's boring. What else? Are there anything? What are some other big ones?
My favorite one is birds aren't real.
But that's lunacy. There's no way you could actually find that.
You've got to do your own research, Pat. Birds aren't real. Right. Government. That's why we're in lockdown, so they could change all the batteries.
Yeah. No. Remember the last time you fucking said that someone said, no, it's the power lines. They're rechargeable.
Oh, that's right. They're wirelessly charged.
They're wireless these days.
I did enjoy that. That was good.
So they get to recharge themselves on the when they land on the power lines.
No, chemtrails is a favorite of mine. I just saw that come up in the chat just because it's ridiculous. And a favorite of mine, actually, from when I was a kid, I think it's called Oak Island. You heard of that one?
Is that the one where they're digging for treasure?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a fucking series on Discovery.
That's so good.
And I started watching it because I like those kinds of things. You know, I watched Deadliest Catch and I watch Alaska Gold, and I've had times. But like, honestly, I watched one again the other day out of interest. I hadn't watched it for and I'm being honest, like 3 series, and they were at the same fucking point in the storyline. It's like it never changes. So I just, ridiculous. Sorry, passionate about that one.
So tune in for more of that on our 100th episode.
Yes, that'll be Monday night. And actually, someone said
I seem to have an adult beverage or two as we do that. So
yeah, man, over here. They've got the beer fridge good to go. Someone actually messaged me. I don't know if you saw it or not. About setting up the what's it called? The chatty, talky, phony in thing. What's that thing called? I can't remember. It's on the internet.
Yeah.
And you talk to it, and it talks back to you.
An internet talkie backy.
Yeah, the message boardy type thing that we talked about last time. That thing, I can't remember the name of it, and I've normally got it open, but it's closed down. Shows how little I pay attention to it. All right, so we'll see. I mean, it's unlikely we'll have the opportunity for people to call in, but if we can, I'll do that tomorrow as well with all my other 1,900 things to do in the studio. All right, we're going now because we've been trying to wrap up for 10 minutes. So I'm done, and as you can see, the dog's done, and Chewy's done, and we'll catch you all tomorrow night from 10 p.m. Good luck with your set tomorrow, Chewy. If you happen to be around between 10 and 11, feel free. Even if you're out, you can push that link from your cell phone. Tell us how it went. Do us a live update.
I'll pop in and let you know and see how much of my self-esteem remains.
All right, dude. Hey, thanks everybody.
I might have more than I started with.
Catch you tomorrow night from 10 p.m. All right, catch you. Bye.